So this video is going to be much more of the balance and the ideas around the new characters. So this is going to be the discussion on the new characters. Now the first thing that I want to discuss is a little bit of meta. So my early thought is that with balance bar getting nerfed, balance bar was always a priority. So your best class in the game was warriors or hunters. They're your damage classes. Hunters are bursty, high damage, low health. Warriors are tanky, slightly less damage. They're more consistent damage output because they don't have to rely on ammo. They don't have to rely on finding a good enough gun. They can pick up any weapon off the ground of any rarity and start swinging, and they're fine. Hunters need to look for their specific gun. They need a rarity. They need ammo. Supports were kind of a mainstay because the extra Shems economy that they gave you and the extra healing that they provide the team meant healing items lasted longer, and leaders were always that afterthought where you ran one if you weren't really sure what to play, or if you had a team that wanted to synergize around one thing and one thing only. So my last tier list video, I had Cheryl as the worst character in the game because she was nothing but a heal bot. She did nothing but heal, heal, heal. And because of that, she lacked utility. The other two characters that were right there with her were Kelly, because Kelly is the weakest of the hunters because she plays like a warrior, but she doesn't have the bonuses warriors do. And then Amanda, because she's really conflicted between, do I use my power for an actual good gun, or do I use my 3 passives around my pistol and just play around being a less damage dealing type character? You know, the best characters in the game were your warriors. Best character was still Army of Darkness. You weren't topping him. You know, Henry, really strong. Exorcist Ash, still really strong and powerful. And you had that was your top tier and your lower tier. And your mid tier, well, Ed's mid, Scotty's mid, this Ash is mid, Pablo was either mid or bad, depending on your thoughts on him. If you like him, if you like that he's a solo queue type character, then you probably put him at mid. And if you didn't like that he's like a solo queue character, that he doesn't provide a lot for the team, then he's a bad character. Then you have that leader meta, where the leaders are kind of just there. Leader Ash is one of the worst characters in the game. Most people said he was the worst, that he had the worst power. You know, Annie was the best because she kind of played into everybody. She gave you big ranged weapon bonus on her power. She gave you ranged weapon on an aura, and she gave you balance bar on an aura. So everybody could benefit off of her no matter what. Warriors got balance bar, hunters got ammo, got a damage buff, and supports got both. Arthur plays into your melee heavy lineups because of the fact that Arthur just straight buffs melee damage, right? So before, there was a lot of talk in the community about damage. Damage is bad. Stop building damage. I saw, you would not understand how many, I'm gonna fuck up my Henry build here. Let me show you. This is what most of my Henry builds. Actually, no, they didn't even put points into that. Alright. Oh, I fucked up. I need to take a point out of something. This is what I would see so many builds be for Henry, or for Warriors in general. You take your 15% damage buff, you take your Seeing Stars 3 at 25%, you take a Seasoned Survivor, you don't really invest too much in health. I actually saw some people run builds like this, which was absurd to me. And it's just like, oh yeah, so what I'm gonna do is, I'm just gonna sit here and I'm just gonna tank lots of damage and do balance bar and finishers because my job is to tank damage. It's not like I do 50% bonus damage with melee weapons or anything like that. Why would I build into that at all? Now that I have my build set back up, damage is king now. You can kind of see that in how this new patch came out. The new patch came out, they wanted to drift survivors away from balance bar to damage. And Mia is the prime example of that, because everything she has is about damage. David is about reducing fear and increasing the energy cost. And the demon is all about energy. Now, the main reason why I want to make this video is I think this patch is a band-aid fix. I think that the design of all of these characters is specifically designed to combat meta. So each of your demons has an... Well, let's cover the survivors first. I talked about survivors. Let's cover this. So, support in David... Let's talk about the early thoughts in my opinion. He's level 10. I have played around Nailgun Master. People say Nailgun's not good. I think he doesn't do good with the Nailgun. I think the Nailgun does okay. I don't think he does good with the Nailgun. I like the Nailgun. I like him with the Nailgun. But I run out of ammo too quick on the Nailgun. I feel like it doesn't do enough damage. I feel like I would be better off with a blunderbuss or a long gun. And because his... I haven't tested Boosted Beacon, but his default ability is shit. The fear reduction is so minuscule. Like, people say support Ash's ability is bad. The fear reduction on it is minuscule. The main reason you run it is because it increases the amount of energy to possess a demon. And then on 25, you get the passive where it takes more energy to maintain the possession, which is better to me. But the main time you want to use these is at a point fight when energy is being regened constantly. But his ability directly counters the Plague Bringer, who has no cooldowns. She burns energy instead of cooldowns. And that, to me, makes her very, very powerful. If you know what your abilities do, what abilities work, and how to manage your energy. This is something to me that I noticed. Puppeteer is a high energy killer, but he doesn't have any management to do. He just needs to get a lot of energy together, spawn portals, and possess a basic unit and go in swinging. Or possess an elite, shock, start swinging. Or possess a boss. Necromancer needs constant energy. He needs energy to maintain possession. He needs energy to possess. He needs energy for portals. He needs to dash constantly to gain energy. Because he has such high maintenance costs. He's kind of dependent on swarming the field to do anything. Warlord doesn't need energy except to possess something and maintain a cost. She puts units out, pops into one, and just starts wailing away at you. Not because, whereas Puppeteer's abilities are bad, Warlord's abilities are good. But she doesn't have a lot. Her main strength is, me big chungus go swing swing. She doesn't need all that. So David is supposed to counter out the energy build. To me, my thought is this. Right now, if you're asking me, a good support gets more value out of David than they do out of Pablo or Cheryl. I don't think you get more out of support Ash. I still say support Ash is good. He, to me, is a number 2. You make the argument for 3, I would say number 2 support. His utility is not there. Because this ability is relatively trash. It's mostly something I will use to help maintain fear going down. This is something I use to passively avoid fear spikes in a fight, in a point fight. I can drop it in the center. Everybody benefits for 30 seconds. My teammates are less likely to get possessed. Unless it makes the demon work a little bit more for it. Haven't tested that again. Nailgun Mastery's alright. I mean... I really don't know what you could do for the nail gun. For, like, what you could do to make this better. Like, honestly, just the fact that he could carry more ammo for the nail gun is the thing I would do.
I do not know what we're dealing with, but I'm not going anywhere.
I do like the nail gun. I like the design of it. I like
Whatever
the
it
new
is,
ADS with it. I like the design of the nail gun. I really do. I don't mind it as much. Soda pop is what makes him fucking killer. Anytime you pop a Shem, you and anybody in the aura of the Shems, whether they get healed or not, by the way, take 30% less damage for 30 seconds. That's getting nerfed. I can tell you right now, that's gonna get nerfed. Survivor mains, get it in while you can. That's too strong. Let's think about this. You can stack that on a warrior. You can stack that on Army of Darkness, for example. You can stack that on Army of Darkness with a 30% damage reduction. He's got 60% damage reduction. If he takes Tougher Than Hell, he's got 70% damage reduction. If he has a shield up, he's at 80% damage reduction right now. If you're going up against a possessed unit, you're at 90% damage reduction right now. That's absurd. Here's my problem. So, I don't know what lineup he fits into, right? Because it's kind of clear each support fits into a lineup, just like each leader. Annie wants hunters. Ash is a balanced, and Arthur is warriors. Right? These two lean one way or another, and this one is your safe option. Supports are kind of similar. Cheryl is both your safe option and your I'm healing option. Ash is the support you run when you don't have a warrior. If you need somebody big and tanky that can tank some hits, and that can do some melee damage for you. He also works well in any lineup, but you have to tutor your playstyle one way or another. You have to lean him a certain way. And Pablo pretty much is exclusively played if you have multiple warriors. You shouldn't be playing him any other time, because he wants to use guns, so you don't play him into a multi-hunter lineup. If you play him into a balanced lineup with, like one of everything, you don't have enough healing or tank power for that lineup. Support Ash is better for tank power, Cheryl is better for healing. So, David comes in. I don't know what lineup he works with. I can't say Soda Pop makes him like a warrior-dependent lineup, because at the end of the day, Pablo is still the better support for a multi-warrior lineup. Because the amulets, he can drop amulets for the warriors to use on themselves if their shields are maxed with Pink F, rather than just straight up using an amulet, like the other supports would do. That means he doesn't have to play as reliant. He's also a lot more self-reliant. So if the two warriors stick together, Pablo can run off and do his own thing without really having to worry. I mean, I don't really know where he fits. Now, Mia's the one. I've actually played a lot more Mia, surprisingly. She's level 5 without me putting any points into her. I got her at 5 just off of playtime, and I don't have a lot of games. Here's the first thing I want to mention. Machete's shit. I don't know what the Machete Master is going to be like with her. And I don't know what the Heavy is like with her. I'm waiting to get her up to 10. I'm going to drop blood points and spirit points that I get into her until I get her up to 10. But I need to try that Heavy out. I need to see. I don't know if I'm going to spec her build like Scotty in Heavy Hitter, or if I'm going to spec her build into One-Handed. I don't. I know I'm going to spec into Sting Like a Bee. Because here's the thing with Mia. I thought Mia was trash when I first played her, but her power is shit. But her passive is fucking great. So, here's her power. When you activate the ability, your fear skyrockets at 3 seconds. If you want to make yourself a target at the beginning of the match, pop this at the beginning of the match. One thing I wish there was a cancel button on it. That's my thing. I wish you could cancel it. The fact that you're locked into it seems counterproductive to me. I'll talk about that in a sec. So, your fear ticked up, and you get a 20% damage boost, and can't be possessed while the ability is active. The problem with this is that this is directly competing with Henry. Henry's active power, which is damage immunity while active, but he can still be possessed, which is arguably more useful. He doesn't get interrupted, he doesn't take damage. The only way you're getting interrupted out of his ability is either from a demon dash, or a choke grab, or a possession. Let's take possession out for a minute, because demon dash is on a long cooldown, and a grab means there's a boss out, which all you have to do is bait the grab at it. If you know the grab's on cooldown, you don't have to worry about it. His ability is arguably better than Mia's, because there's no situation as a Mia player where I'm like, oh, I'm gonna get possessed, let me pop my power so I don't get possessed? Like, hey, I need to get this revive, I need to start this objective, I need to get to this car, right? Problem with that is you still can take hits and take damage. I would prefer if Uncontrollable, instead of a 20% melee bonus, gave you 20% damage reduction. That would be better. And the damage reduction is also pretty much worthless. For one reason. Notice how I haven't talked about the fear reduction yet. Or power. You get 1% bonus damage for every point of fear above 20%. And it keeps going, and going, and going, until you hit 40%. She's a warrior, so she already deals 50% melee. Now you're getting 40% of that if you're full fear. And if you have devastating force, you're now at 105% bonus melee damage. That's without Sing Like a Bee, which means that your max fear light attacks are at 120. It's an absurd amount of damage. She can swing a hunting knife for the same damage as a sword. Big caveat to that. Fear reduction. Mia's kind of a double-edged sword, pun intended. She does absurd amounts of damage off of fear and anger, which I have to say that in Yoda every time, I'm sorry. Absurd damage, but you have to maintain your fear. This means you're going to get possessed. I found it funny. I went up against a demon that possessed me and depossessed me for the sole purpose of dropping my fear. I was one-shotting basic units with a sword. She would possess me just to drop my fear down below the threshold and make me earn it back up again. If I attack my teammate, I can kill them. If I get possessed, I lose my bonus. And I like that bonus. The other issue is that this bonus, when you want it the most, is at book stage. When you need that damage to keep the demon off the book. You don't have it. Because your fear is going to be so low at book stage. Remember that when you pop book, fear instantly drops to 0. Fear raises so much slower at book stage. It is not worth it. She is a really good early game survivor in my opinion. She plays really good without skill points. Like, you give me a level 1 or a level 10 Mia, and you can do the same amount of damage as a level 25 Mia. The issue that I see with her right now is that risk-reward on fear leads to anger is not worth it. Unless you have somebody that's dedicated to depossessing her. The other issue I have with her is on her power. You get a fear reduction per kill. So 8 fear reduced per kill. Which means to get below the possession threshold, on average you need 3 or 4 kills. Now you only have 25 seconds to do that. That's not hard to do because these two abilities go hand in hand. Which means popping Uncontrollable and increasing your fear powers fear leads to anger. The issue with this strategy is that the fear reduction on kill is not instant. It's not like a chunk gets pulled away. It ticks down slowly. If the demon is fast enough and pays attention, they can possess Mia before the fear meter has gone down. I do want to mention that Mia's uncontrollability is not that good. I find it funny that both of the survivors at release have terrible abilities and really good passives. At least one really good passive. Because Fury the Anger is absurd amounts of damage. I played a level 1 Mia and did 47k damage with a common machete. The next closest person to me had 23k, was my level 25 Exorcist Ash with a fucking purple double barrel. Think about that for a minute. I more than doubled his damage at level 1 with a common, with him having a weapon mastery, a good gun, and being level 25. But if you're playing around a demon that's not fearing you, she does no damage. I had another game where I was level 3, where I did 19k damage, because the demon never feared me. She kept possessing me and running me away, and I would have to build this up. If you can't maintain your fear on her, she's terrible. I still need to test the heavy, and the weapon mastery, but I don't really care too much about that. So now we segue over to the demon. And I got a lot to say about this demon. First off, this demon is causing a lot of crashes on PS4. A lot. 7 games I've played against it, 5 games have had a DC that is related to an error in the application. I'm gonna apologize as well for the noises that she makes. They're really annoying. Cauldron. Blight. Okay? Not talking about Cauldron just yet. Her kit. Not talking about her kit just yet. Talk about her units. Talk about how they work. Her units have a mechanic around Blight. See that little spider next to it? All of your square and triangle abilities, although on the witch, it's not your triangle, it's your circle, apply Blight. Blight is a status condition where if the demon is affected, if the survivor is affected by Blight, they take passive damage per second. She gains energy per second off of this, and it reduces their healing and damage by a small amount. Where does it say that? I thought it said that was something. But Blight, so far, I don't notice that. I thought it was going to be really good. It's not. I mean, unless you're applying Blight over and over and over and over again on survivors. Like, my one skill point I put into her is the number of Blight infections I can apply. Not really seeing that. I'm really thinking about going into my first point being energy, by the way. Now that I think about that, I will put that 1 point, move that 1 point around. But, so, Blight is applied off of special abilities. Now, why is this important? All of the Plaguebringer's abilities do not have a cooldown. They cost energy. So, all of her possessed units, when they do light or heavy attacks, give her infernal energy back. She's a meter management killer. She has no cooldown. Now, her basic units are kind of unique. They deal next to no damage. These fuckers deal nothing. AI versions of these guys deal nothing. I see a lot of people talking about, oh my god, she's OP. Oh my god, she's OP. No. You've got to know what you're doing on her for her to be OP. Her units deal no damage. They deal like 30 hit a hit under the best circumstances. If it's not a possessed, if it's just AI. They don't have a lot of health, but they're fast. When they dodge, too. They don't like dodge back. They duck to avoid the damage. So they, in my opinion, they have the worst dodge in the game because of the fact that they don't dodge out of the way. They just go down. They don't create space at all, which means you don't really avoid warriors. It's good, I guess, for hunters because you're not losing distance from a hunter. Normally a hunter dodges away from you. So, I guess that's good, but it also isn't at the same time. You have the double pierce, which is a double lunge. It has much more range than the Necromancer one does, but it functions exactly the same. Damage is about the same. You have Vicious Circle, which is just a spin attack. It's the whole spin attack, and that's probably your best way for hitting survivors when they're grouped up. A lot of people say that that circle is good. It's not good for damage. What it's good for is blight. If you want to stack blight, you can just spam this ability and put a bunch of blight stacks on. But these guys are fast enough, in my opinion, where they are the strongest build. We did go up against a possessed spam build that was pretty good. And their resistance to damage is pretty significant with a cauldron nearby. I will notice I wasn't paying attention to a cauldron aura, and I wasted a good amount of shotgun shells for no reason. The Pit Deadite is what has the potential to be broken. The Pit Deadite is essentially a Demi-Elgos for warriors. So the Demi-Elgos, if you didn't know, take 70% reduced damage from guns. Which means it's kind of a hunter's worst nightmare. Pit Deadite is kind of designed to counter the multiple warrior meta because these fuckers take 70% reduced melee damage. And you will freaking feel that crap on a warrior. These things take forever to kill on AI units. And they take even longer to kill on possessed units. If you want to possess a unit, you possess an elite. Now, here's the thing I have to mention. They suck for damage. These remind me of tanky. This is what the Warlord Heavy should be. Because these fuckers are impossible to kill, but they deal no damage. The damage they deal off of their attacks is absurd. The damage, the Stomp is pathetic. The Stomp is one of the worst abilities in the game. It is single-handedly the worst elite ability in the game. It is worse than the Trident on Necro, because if you hit the Trident, you know, you can do good damage. It doesn't even do good damage. It's just, oh, I Stomp, here's some Blight. The Corrosive Blast, which is the little charge, they run at you like a fat kid like a fat kid on a treadmill chasing a donut. The one where Chris Griffin's got the donut, the Twinkie dangling, and he's chasing it on the treadmill, right? That's what they look like when they do that. It's hilarious. It deals no damage. It applies blight. That's good. And it's a mobility tool. That's good. The main reason you run this is 2 reasons. Resistance to melee. And when they die, they leave a puddle on the ground that stops you from running and dodging. It also slows your walking speed when you go through it. And it's not visible. It's not like this big, shining aura on the ground or anything. It blends into the ground. So, like, if you try and sprint or dodge, you're gonna die. You have to, like, know where these fuckers are, where they die, and just avoid them. I also want to mention that the death animation on them is kind of annoying because it takes a second for them to go into it. So if you're a hunter, you're going to waste extra ammo on it. These right here mean you can't run double warrior. Because if you run double warrior, your hunter, if you have one, has to kill these. So if you know, oh, hey, they got 2 warriors, you know what I do? I'm going to build into elites. I'm building an elite. Fuck up here. Have the elite. I don't care if they deal damage. Here's what I'm gonna do. I'm gonna make you waste your ammo. That being said, both of these units aren't great. They take a lot of knowledge to know how to use. Basic Prisoner does not play like a Necro skeleton. Pit Deadite does not play like a melee Demi-Elgos. He's a tank. He's basically, you drop him in, he sucks up damage, and he kills time. And these guys, you spam out and hope you can take advantage of the chaos. Boss is where it's at. And boss is important. Boss has a bunch of interesting mechanics. First off, I don't think I can stress this enough, both her light and heavy attack are projectiles. She's fucking absurd for countering warriors. The fact that you can also see her when she moves around on other, like, compared to Eligos, means that she's a lot easier for your hunters to kill. In my opinion, she's a hunter's best friend because they can light her up very quickly. She moves really quickly. Here's where she has problems. First off, you have your screen. This is really good because it stuns for a second, increases fear, does a little bit of damage. Main reason you're gonna run this is because you can scream, you can knock a survivor at what they're doing. So it gives you an option, a stunning option. Her grab is terrible. You will never use that grab. She has one of the worst grabs. Like, she's up there with the titty grab. She's up there with the titty grab for that. Potion pictures! Meh. So she throws out 2 potions. The survivor gets hit by it, they take more damage for health and shield. But this implies that she has minions around, which cost energy. And everything about her costs energy. So very rarely are you going to be in a situation where you're going to be up and have a swarm around you, unless you just are full on energy. You got 400% energy or something like that. If you hit an evil unit, they become immune to balance bar damage, so you can't F-chain to avoid her. And this is where her cauldron comes in handy. The cauldron makes it so that auras within the cauldron take reduced balance bar damage, and survivors take less healing. And that's what kills you. If you are able to trap the survivors in a spot where they have to heal in the cauldron, you've essentially won the game because they're not going to be able to out-heal your damage output. We did a game today where she dropped a cauldron in Fort Gort. I went up to the fort to get Shems and Amulets. I left the fort with the exact same amount of Shems and Amulets because I got 3 Shems and 1 amulet out of that fort, and because she trapped us in the doorway with that cauldron, all 3 Shems were gone, keeping us alive. And she's not even that, it wasn't that good of a demon. That demon lost. Handedly. Opportunistic. A good demon that can trap you with that cauldron, that cauldron is not a flutist, that cauldron's a fucking tank. It takes damage. She drops it in the center of a point, it kind of forces the survivors to play on the fringe of an objective. I had that happen at Windmill. She dropped it right in the center, and I had this small sliver in the objective playing as David, where I was just standing. Because if I popped a Shems there, I'd be fine. The reduced infernal energy cost for abilities is really good as well, because it means that if she possesses a unit in there, she can just spam you out pretty quickly. Expert Alchemist just gives a further 30% effect to this. This means that very early on, she's the anti-healer. The level 25, which increases the speed at which demon gains energy when a survivor is blinded. So this affects the regen. If you have 2 points in infernal energy with her in your threat tree, she starts regenerating energy. Where normally you have to have 4 or 5 points in it, rather kill it. The fact that she gets that basically as a passive is really good, but it incentivizes you to apply Blight. And Blight to me is not worth it. Toil and Trouble gives you more benefits to the Cauldron, just to make the Cauldron tanky and add insult to injury. I really don't think you need this skill. She's not like Warlord where you need that 45. She's not like Puppeteer where that 45 is like kind of trash and not really like needed, because it's the exact same thing as your previous ability. But I do like the way that this tree is structured. I also love the way that her skill tree is structured, which is where I will segue into now. These 2 rows at the top up here are dedicated exclusive to basics. These 2 in the middle are dedicated exclusive to elite. And these two at the bottom are dedicated exclusive to boss. I love this. I also like the fact that you can build this with no restrictions whatsoever. You get 1 point on the skill tree that you can spend on either of these end-of-tier abilities. I wish more demons had skill trees like this. I genuinely think they could go in and revamp these skill trees to match what she has. I love that design. But anyways, let's talk about her units. First, we're talking about boss, and I want to mention boss because this explains Blight a bit more. So, you have some standard things that are not here. You have boss, more resistance to balance bar. That's not really noticeable with her. Heavy damage on boss is only 15%. That's fine in my opinion, because she's not designed to be a high damage. Health Razor on boss at 35% is good. She is a squishy boss. And we'll talk more about that in a minute. Relentless Evil to reduce the cooldown. It's only 20%, and I don't think you need that cauldron that much. If you do the cauldron for stupid shit, like I'm gonna drop it to block a legendary trait, or something like that, then yeah, you can run that, right? Portal Authority for energy to place a boss. This is good because she needs energy. She lives or dies by energy. Anything involving energy for her is really good. So, this is good. Now, there's a unique mechanic to her. Alright, set her passive here. It says, if the witch is defeated, she rises from the dead. She has half the health bar she normally has, but is immune to balance bar damage, and her abilities have no cost to use. Here's what I want to mention when she reses. She will only res if she runs out of energy. If you straight up kill her, she doesn't get a res. It's only if she runs out of energy. So, a lot of what I've seen is people will summon a boss with no energy, next to no energy. She'll die right away because of that lack of energy, and then res, and she'll get a limited window of time where she can just start blitzing you. And remember that she gains energy off of her light and heavy attack, so she can maintain that cost for that resurrected form for a decent amount of time off of that strategy. I want to mention that because I do think it's a cool strategy. She can basically pop a boss when nobody else would even think of popping a boss as its value. One issue I have is that she is not a tanky boss in terms of, I will summon this boss, and I will finish you before you capture my objective, like you can do with Henrietta, or Eligos, or Ash. You pop her right before an objective spawns, you're not taking anybody with you. You wasted your boss. Some of her boss powers too aren't great. Primal Scream doesn't deal damage, not meant to deal damage. Potion Pitcher, if you can hit your potion. It's got that risk reward. Double effect on the potion. Ooh, it's like a marked headshot if you hit a survivor. And if you hit a possessed unit, they basically take no balance bar. That effect also stacks, by the way, on Cauldron. I had a Plaguebringer that did that. They kept spamming one of their elites. It took 0 balance bar damage. 0. None. I had a fucking Henry swinging into the bitch with a purple sledgehammer. He took no balance bar damage. He never died. Right? Right. Alright, so let's cover Blight a little bit. So some of these effects are really interesting. So this increases the amount of Blight infections that she can apply. This increases the duration of an infection, and this increases the damage over time. Here's the thing. Building in a Blight is fine if you plan on applying it a lot. It's a nice passive for maintaining energy, but it's not anything really good for that. Grandmaster Dash is really good. I love this ability. It makes it so that every time you perform a dash, you can reduce the cooldown period on your portal. And if you hit with your dash, you get energy and fear. So you can pretty much immediately dash, drop portal, and possess somebody. And create so much chaos off of that one exchange. she also has another ability here to reduce the cooldown of the dash. So she has that tool up much more often than other killers do. Is insanely powerful. From what I've seen though, that Blight is not really effective. You either have to hard build into it, or there's no point in running it. Looking at her basic, the damage off of Vicious Circle's not great. I don't see it being that useful. I could see you putting this at 10, but not 15%. The damage of the Double Pierce is also pretty shit. It has good range, so it can hit, but it's not really worth it. You can increase the damage as well by 15, balance 4 by 35. Maximum energy you can accumulate. This is similar to Warlord. She has absurd amount. This is 400 energy compared to Warlord, which is like 325. And the Infernal Revenue's pretty good. She caps at 30%, whereas other characters cap at 20%, but that's also mandatory. You need energy on her. You have Health Razor Basic, which is really strong because her units are squishy. Portal Authority again, which again you need that energy drop. Quick Charge Demonic, this reduces the dash time. Not a fan of that. I kind of like the longer dash. Blight Fatigue. This is what makes the Blight build good though. Is because Blight infected survivors dealing less damage. This is what makes a Blight build any good, in my opinion. Is, especially if you're able to stack this with a 15-second, 20% debuff. This really makes Pit Deadites strong. Really makes them strong. Because now that's even less melee damage. It's 90% resistance to melee. Warriors will do nothing to you. But again, that means you have to build in a Blight. And the other issue with that strategy, well, that's Pit Deadite there. So, Energy Leech is fantastic because you can maintain possession costs pretty quickly. Head Start's good. Corrosive Blast is shit. Wicked Fast is kinda shit. Energy from a dash. Believe it or not, this is actually really good. This is, if you max this is 50 more energy a dash per survivor hit. You hit 2 survivors, that is almost a full bar of energy. That is really strong for this killer. Buff health bar, buff damage, buff balance bar, blah blah blah. Portal Authority, blah blah blah. Increased damage by splatter, worthless. And then Possession Extension, which reduces the amount of energy required to maintain possession, which is really good. She doesn't have one that reduces possession cost, but she has one to reduce maintenance. And that is good because if you max this out as well, what you get is you get a demon that is able to, especially with Energy Leech, that's able to maintain their possession on units for a long time. Another thing I do want to mention too is you have Efficient Evil. What this does is it reduces the energy cost required to use an individual unit's abilities, but you can only pick one. Which means you have 44 points to spend in the tree, which I like. They actually listen to the feedback of more points in this basic tree, and this last tree kind of being a capstone, if you will, to an ability, like from other games where, you know, you choose either or as you work your way up, and then you get that last capstone that, like, yes, your rocket launcher now fires nukes, or something like that in an RPG. This really determines what you want to build into. From what I've seen so far, I see a lot of people doing Efficient Evil Boss, which is a good idea. But the strategy I like I said, is Combat Fatigue, Possession Extension, Energy Leech, and a Blight build. And I mention that because this build makes it really hard to kill your elite. So Efficient Elite means you have an elite that can get Blight up a lot more often with Combat Fatigue on a warrior. Really like that. But then again, that also means you have to play into their abilities, which are really good. So let's end this with how I think the meta is. From what I've seen so far. Where does Plague Bearer fit? Plague Bearer is a very high-risk, high-reward character. She has a lot of skill. So where Warlord is your end-game brawler that's good at killing Book, she's good at early game as well because she's tanky if she can jump survivors before they loot. But then you have to give up your maintenance, so to speak, at the end of the game. Necromancer is really good for point fights, because if you can generate your threat level and swarm objectives, you can overwhelm survivors. But they don't really do good at the book, unless you pop Evil Ash. And they don't really do good at the beginning of the game because their maintenance costs are too high. You have Puppeteer, who's a really good early game killer because they can rush survivors at the gate, but loses power as the game goes on unless they can drain the survivor of resources. The Plaguebringer fits none of these roles in my opinion. The Plaguebringer is entirely an opportunistic killer. Her value comes strictly from good cauldron placements, good boss summons, good energy management, and knowing what units to summon. Warriors are giving you problem? Build into elites. She's also a killer that has to play a very balanced lineup. That's one thing I see with her compared to these guys. These guys can commit into a build and stay with it at the start of a game. A warlord who wants to build into elites can do that at the start of a game because there's no issue. A Puppeteer who wants to build into elites can do that at the start of the game with no issue. A Necromancer who wants to build into elites at the start of the game can do that with no issues. A Plaguebringer who wants to build into elites at the start of the game cannot do that if they don't have a warrior on their team, because the elite Deadeye is hard countered by hunters. Hard countered. You could run a 3 hunt if you know you're getting a Plaguebringer that's bringing elite. Like, let's say you're in a custom game with a friend and it's like, yeah, I'm going to try this elite build. You want to know how you fuck them over? You run Ed, you run Ash, you run Amanda, and you run Pablo. And you say, okay, I see your pit, Deadeye, and I raise you guns. Same thing with the basics. You can't just build in the basics saying, well, the elite is trash, which I think a lot of people do. Elite is trash and it doesn't deal damage like the other units do. Yes, elite is trash. It doesn't deal damage. You know what they do? They tank. Her basics can't do that. Her basics can't tank. So, on the support side, it's very interesting. Mia is that high-risk, high-reward option that the Plaguebringer is. But she's clearly the worst of the warriors. From what I've seen, from what I've played on her, and you might say, well, you're level 5, that's why. No, I'm level 5, yes, but I have playtime on her. I have about 3 hours of playtime on her already. She's very high risk, high reward. And that high reward doesn't even pay off if the demon doesn't play into your strategy. That high risk is always there, but the high reward never plays into it all the time. Henry's the safest option at warrior. Scotty is a high risk, high reward because he builds into heavies. You don't know if you're going to be able to get heavies off sometimes. Ash is good all the time. These are all really good options. You don't have to worry. If you pick one of these 3, you don't have to worry about playstyle. You pick up a weapon and you start swinging. She has much more management than other characters, which can lead her being one of the best characters or one of the worst characters. And David has a similar boat, because Soda Pop is such a strong ability because it's damage reduction off of a heal. It is much better than Cheryl's ability of fear reduction. It is much better. But see, Cheryl has 2 ways to heal. She has her circle and she has her shemps. And she heals more off of shemps than other characters. She carries more shemps than other characters. She spawns with more shemps. So she gives more overall healing, whereas David has to use his shemps carefully. Ash has 3 ways to heal people. And he buffs your range damage, and he drops your fear consistently. Pablo can play solo. He can play objectives by himself. He can use guns without alerting a demon, drop a car without alerting a demon, and he constantly gives the team shielding, so to speak. So, I think David is better than Pablo, and it's arguable if he's better than Cheryl, and I think Cheryl got a massive buff, in my opinion, now that the Plaguebringer's out, because the Plaguebringer reduces healing with the Cauldron, which means Cheryl gets a buff because Cheryl does lots of healing. So her being the Healbot 9000 gives her value now. So, with her stock going up, Pablo's stock slightly diminishing, David's in this weird spot. I'm going to get him to 25 and see what is happening. So obviously I do need to do a bunch more testing. But this is some early thoughts in terms of how you should build your characters and how you should play your demons.